Here to Heinz presentation then, and so Heinz, we agreed that we're going to have a conversation here, so I thought it was great to have a conversation, extend the hour presentation with a conversation. That was awesome too. And so just before I move to Heinz, let me tell you, everyone, that we already started a new set of sessions, right? I didn't want to interrupt to tell everyone that's this, but hopefully you already know that we start a new batch of sessions. And so basically the way this event works is that every hour we start a new set of sessions, right? So you're going to see on the sessions, you're going to see the sessions that are available for you right now. And if you come here on the top on the reception icon, you can see exactly what's going on live right now, right? You're gonna see like in reds the talks that are going on live right now. So I think that's a good way. So Heinz, transition now to you. You are one. Not only you're a Java champion, great developer, you're a performance specialist, but one thing that you've done that a lot of developers love to do, and a lot of people ask me about this, and I'm sure as they also ask you too, is how can you become a businessman being a developer, right? How can you actually make money being an independent developer? How can you be your own boss, or how can you launch a product, or kind of things like this? How I can create my own startup? How can I start my business? Any of the similar type of questions. And so thanks very much for coming here to hopefully to share with some of your secrets with us. But I'm here to do a conversation with you, but I want you to get started with whatever you have to say. But it's wonderful to have you here to talk about this topic.
You just dumped all these questions on me at once. It's like, where are we going to go with this? Okay, that's great. No, that's great.
All of this is just one question, right? So the question of people.
It's great. It's absolutely great.
Right? So
that's great.
Yeah.
So I saw your advert for this event, and today I was teaching an O'Reilly course on dynamic proxies, and so I thought I wouldn't be able to make it. But then I also thought, well, Bruno won't want me because I haven't had a job for like 22 years. So what am I going to tell you? I'm going to tell you my bad career of not having a job for 22 years. So I really didn't feel like I belong here. You're talking about career, and I'm talking, and I haven't had a career in the Java world. In fact, in programming, I've only had a job for 2 years, and then I quit and became independent. And
can I just make a comment really quick? So the one thing I tell everyone is that a job is not a career, right? So I mean, you probably have a career better than a lot of people that only have jobs. So you're in the perfect place.
No. If you realize how much I just goof around and do stuff that doesn't earn any money, you'll be really surprised. Okay, so I had an advantage and a disadvantage at the same time. And my advantage and disadvantage is that I never saw my father go to a job. He never had a job. He didn't even have a career. When I was young, he was studying for a while. Then he started selling houses. At one point, he tried to import Mirages, the fighter jets for South Africa. It didn't work out. He did all sorts of weird things, buying and selling, and then he started a factory. But he always had something he was doing. So he was always working. He never stopped working. In fact, he worked harder than any of the other dads that I knew. But he didn't have a job. So I didn't grow up with a role model of somebody who has a job. And my kids are just they've got the same problem. They've never seen me go to work. They've never seen me sort of have a job and go work for somebody. So that's how I grew up, and so it's been very difficult for me to do anything else. And I tried for 2 years to work for a company, and I really struggled because I don't know naturally how to. I don't want to say it, but how to suck up to middle management and to go up the hierarchy and so on. I can't do it. I mean, I tried, but I was hopeless. So in terms of the sort of the knowledge of how to move around in a corporate environment, I can't do it. I've got no idea. Really, I'm clueless. So I tried for 2 years, and then eventually it just worked out that I quit my job and became self-employed. And as I said, I had this disadvantage that I don't know how to have a job, but also had the advantage of seeing my father survive for his whole life, running with doing his job without a job. And so we would sit around the dinner table and he would tell us things and say this and that, and don't do that, and don't do this, and and there are loads and loads of tips that I've written down. And I've actually made a course for that. It's in my booth. If you go to my booth, you get a 50% off discount on that. And so I made a list of things that I find are very, very important if you want to run your own business. And programmers especially, we tend to focus on the wrong thing. And I find myself doing that too, because I know what the right thing is, but I still focus on the wrong thing. So what will happen is, I know that I should be, as a business, I should be focusing on sales. I know that I should focus on sales, because you can sell things that are not perfect. That's okay. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect before you sell it. And very often you as a programmer, as an engineer, as a developer, you try to make it perfect before you try to sell it. And of course, when you try that, then it doesn't really work out, because you can never make it perfect. And if you make it perfect, then you're going to, at the same time, spend too much money on it, and you're not going to get enough money to pay for it, so to fund it. So this is incredibly difficult to do. So sales is very important. It's really, really important. You have to be able to sell things. You mustn't be scared to ask for money. You mustn't be scared to phone up your customer and say, your bill's overdue, please pay. This is a very difficult thing to do for a programmer. But and it's, I remember when I had a job, it was a long time ago, I still remember those days, back in the days when I had a job. And we would see the salespeople walk around in their suits and fancy clothes and briefcases and BMWs and so on. And we saw them all hanging around there, and we thought, these people are just useless. They don't know anything. Like, you speak to them, they don't even know what they're selling. They're just smiling and they're talking and but they didn't have a clue what we were actually producing. And they'd come back and say, we got $1 million contract. And we go like, great. What did you sell? What did you actually sell? And they told us what they sold. We go like, we don't do that, right? We actually don't do what you just sold. And they go, okay, well, just do it. Just do it. And when I was working as a programmer, I would look down on these people and go like, these guys are nuts. I mean, they haven't got a clue. They don't even know what we're making, and they're selling stuff. And then we've got to produce what they apparently sold to the customer. And I didn't realize just how important those people were. They were far more important than the programmers, because until you sell something, you don't get the cash to do what you actually want to do. So the sales is super important for a business. Without sales, you don't have a business. You've just got a hobby, right? The quality of a product doesn't matter all that much, unfortunately. And I hate saying that, because when I do something, I spend hours trying to make days, weeks, months, making it as perfect as possible. And I could have stopped after like 2 weeks and said, right, I'm done. Let's start selling this. So that was sort of my most important point about the sales. Are you still there? Is anybody still there? It's like, am I still live? Because I'm not getting anything back.
So you said you an introduction, but there's people said Juan said amazing, and Chris said authentic, honest discussion. So I think yeah, people are there, right?
Okay, good. So
yeah, so there's a lot of people around here, right? So
Because I must tell the participants, Bruno, I've got to just tell them this, that you must understand something, that when I'm speaking in front of a group of people, I can see the faces and I can see the reactions, and I've got some feeling that somebody's actually there listening. But here, it's like I'm talking to myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you know about yourself. So Jim Bittencourt said, "This is great." George says, "Yeah,
okay, fantastic. All right, awesome.
Torben and Fabricio and Davison, everyone is here. So if you ask questions, people are gonna talk to you, right?
Okay,
so,
that's great. That's great.
We're paying attention.
Okay. So the first thing is sales. The second thing is a lot of people, when they start a business, they watch what others do and they think they need to do the same. So they'll go out, they'll go to the bank, they'll take out a business loan, they'll buy themselves a fancy laptop, they'll buy a fancy iPhone XS, whatever. I don't know what the fancy ones are. I've got like a really old iPhone. That's what I use. I've got an old beaten up car which I drive. I do have a good MacBook, but I mean, you need to limit what you need to buy stuff that makes sense. Be smart about what you buy. Get good quality that lasts for a long time. Don't just get the cheapest stuff. But be careful not to get into business debt. And this is something where I got suckered right in the beginning, because I went to the bank and I said, I'm starting a business, and they're like smiling and like, oh, that's nice. That's very good. Well done. And I said, I'm starting a business. I'm going to do a small limited company. And they go, okay, that's great. I said, I want to get an overdraft facility for my business. And all I wanted was like $1,000 or $2,000 overdraft facility, so I could buy a computer and then sell it. And, in the meantime, I've got some cash. And they were smiling, saying, no problem, we'll give you, we could probably organize a loan. And I felt like such a tough negotiator. And then when they gave me the paperwork, I was signing pages. And somewhere in the middle, there was what they call in South Africa a surety form. It's called a guarantee or something like that in other countries. And I didn't really look at it too closely. I said, what is that? And they said, oh, no, they all signed that. And I signed it and I carried on. And afterwards, I spoke to my dad like a few years ago, and a few years later, and he said to me, are you crazy? Are you crazy? You never sign those papers. Like, you don't sign those papers. You mustn't ever sign those papers, because when you've got a business, the business must be separate from you, right? And he said, I can't believe I didn't tell you this. And he probably did tell me that, but I obviously didn't listen. Don't ever sign that, right? You need to keep your personal assets separate from your business assets. That's really important. So I managed to get that guarantee annulled, but and after that, I tried to be very, very careful to instead buy things smartly and with cash, and to use the sales that came in to fund my business. And rather than get a business loan, I would increase my sales. And it's like, for example, if I need a new whatever, I need new equipment all the time. I don't think, can I go to the bank to ask for a loan? I think, what can I make that I can sell quickly to make some money to buy the thing I need to buy? So I sort of use my customers as the driving force for my business. We are fortunate in our business, in our industry, that generally our capital equipment is not that expensive, and you might disagree because. You might disagree because a laptop could be like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 if you get a really good one, but that's nothing. That's nothing. And my father started a factory, and he was talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get started. Whereas in our business, it's really minimal compared to everything else. And Jim Bethencourt there says, create an LLC. You want to have a limited liability company. So this is important. You don't want to operate as a sole trader, or even worse, as a partnership. You want to have a limited liability company. And this means that whatever you put into the company, you might lose. So if you invest $100,000 into your company, that you might lose and you'll be gone. But then you need to be very careful not to bind yourself personally to that company. And as I said, it can happen very easily. Like I had I had one customer. I was going to do some work for them, and normally for that company, people work directly for them, and I wanted to go via my company. And right at the end, they slipped in the paper that I would also be personally liable for my company and to them. And I just said no. And you can say no. That's something that programmers don't realize, is you can actually say no when you don't want to do something. If they say, hey, you need to sign this, and you go like, oh no, I'm not going to sign that. And they go like, oh, okay. And then they just carry on. And we think that when somebody asks something, we have to do it. And we can just say, no, I'm not doing that. And they say, okay, all right, move on. So limited liability companies, something like that is very, very important. Even if it costs you something, it's a lot more expensive to lose your entire future because of one mistake, right? One mistake can cost you your entire future. So that's it for I would say, the capital equipment. And I've got a lot more things to say about this in my course. If you go to my booth, you'll see that there.
All right. So actually, since you mentioned your course, Heinz, let me kind of quickly ask you this. So basically, so if you just kind of do a promotion here for you then. So everyone, if you go to the booth, right? So in the bottom here, in the last icon, there's expo area, right? So if you go in the expo area, you're gonna see there's several booths from different people. They're offering you, either free gifts, or in the case of Heinz, he's giving you 50% discount on his program, right? So Heinz, tell me, what is this program? You created a program to help developers to be entrepreneurs. Is that the idea?
Yeah, exactly. So I created this thing, and I created it with my son, because we were talking about entrepreneurship, and I thought, I actually need to capture all these ideas, these different things, because the course itself takes quite a long time. My aunt, who was an entrepreneur also all her life, she actually wrote to me and say, "Are you crazy? Are you nuts? You can't tell people this stuff. Are you trying to create competitors for yourself?" So the price is really not that high. It's one of my cheapest courses, but I really think that there are lots of people out there who can benefit from it, because if you've grown up and you haven't had the benefit I've had of being around the dinner table with a father who's run all his business all his life, and whose father had a business, and his grandfather had a business, and his great-grandfather had a business, then you don't know a lot of things that I just know because I've seen them, for generations. Similarly, that I can't figure out office politics at all. I lose it completely. So this is why I made that little course, and it's really cheap. If you can't afford that, then you really should not start a business. You really shouldn't start a business, because running a business normally costs quite a lot of money. So that's why I say rather leave it.
Yeah, and so just to add to that, I actually also put on the booth my book, that is how to create unique products, right? So basically, if you add Heinz course, right, he's saying, no, you're creating competitors, right? So actually, if you get Heinz course and get my book about unique products, right, then you're not gonna have competitors, because you're gonna have unique products, right? So that's gonna be a cool combination right there.
Exactly. Exactly right.
So Heinz, so guys, we want to have this as a conversation to Heinz, right? So with Heinz, right? So I want everyone is watching us here, to ask questions, because we have this unique opportunity to have a true developer entrepreneur here with us, and we're gonna talk about. So a lot of people want to build their companies, wanna run like a parallel job, right? You can have a job and you can make money in parallel. A lot of people are writing books or doing, Udemy course and things like this, because they want to both make a little extra money, but also they want to do their own thing, right? They want to do their stuff instead of what someone else tells you to do. So you are watching us here. Ask your questions right now. What is your biggest difficulty, your biggest challenge facing for you to move your career in that direction? So we can talk about here a little bit. So
That's
just kind of reading some here. So Dwayne says, still driving a 2003 Dodge truck here. I still run, so why not, right? And and Steven says, absolutely, we can go fly to Crete to force J. Crete 2020 without Heinz, right? We are demanding an unconference without him.
Well, actually, Steven, I've got bad news. You actually can't do that.
Right.
So let me talk about that, because it's a really good point. So, and I know of course you're kidding, but I'm going to say that you actually can't do that. You can come to Crete, and you can gladly do an unconference if you want, right? You might get arrested, you might go to jail for life, and I'm not kidding, right? But But you could do an unconference as much as you want, but you cannot call it J. Crete. All right, you cannot call it J. Crete without my permission. So you can't do it without me. And this is something which is a really important point to do with entrepreneurially and so on, is that you need to protect your assets. And one of my assets is J. Crete. Now it's not. I mean, I'm the one of the founders, right? But I have registered the trademark J. Crete. This is a registered trademark. So this is important to sort of cross your T's and dot your I's. That you need to protect protect yourself. Obviously, I know you're kidding, Stephen, and I would love you to come to Crete and be here this year. Would have been absolutely fantastic. But I know you're kidding. But besides the kidding, this is actually a very important point. Is if you have a great product, like my friend Kirk Pepperdine has registered the trademark "Measure, Don't Guess," right? He's actually registered that as a registered trademark in the EU. So if you, for example, start a company and you say, we do Java performance and our motto is measure, don't guess, then he will say, sorry, you can't use that phrase, because measure, don't guess belongs to Kirk Pepperdine, right? J. Crete belongs to my company. That's the registered holder of the trademark. So this is something when you have a business, is you need to protect yourself, because people will come along and will try to take over what you've got. That's just how life is. So one has to protect ourselves for that. But I know you were kidding, of course. K. Crete, Kotlin Crete.
No, it's good that he's eating, but that's a very, very important topic, right? I mean, I think that protecting your business and protecting your brand is important.
Very important.
And sometimes people don't even realize that even protecting your personal brand, right, might be important, right? So so when you do anything, even personal, when your blog that you created, and things like this, there was a big discussion not long ago, like maybe a few months ago, where a company here in Brazil, a famous open source company here in Brazil, launched a podcast, the exact same name of a podcast from someone from the open source community that had been running this podcast for like 10 years, right? And so then those guys, they went and they talked to people, and I actually have to go see what the result was, but I think that they were kind of trying to pressure the company to drop it. But I think that legally, I don't think they were protected, for example, right? So so some companies might be nice, right? Other companies might not be, right? So I think I agree with you, Heinz. We have to be careful about those things.
It's also, Bruno, it's also protecting your integrity, your reputation, your personal reputation is also very important. Good reputation is worth far more than money, and that's really hard to maintain, because people interpret things differently. So if you say something, they might get the wrong idea of. They might do mind reading of what you're thinking, and most likely will get it completely wrong. So it's a tricky one. It's a very tricky one to to keep on protecting yourself, protecting what you've built up, because you don't want just to be cancelled for no particular reason,
Right. So Heinz, there's one thing that you mentioned in the beginning that I totally agree with, and that's actually what I write.
Only one thing. Oh, good. At least there's one thing that Bruno agreed with. Great.
You mentioned a lot of good things, but there's one thing. There's one particular thing that kind of caught my attention. That, and I do talk a little bit about that in the introduction of my book for the same, I think, similar reason as you're talking about. But you said that the salespeople, right, are really, really important. And I know a lot of developers, and when we are inside the companies, right, and you mentioned this, right, we think, man, those salespeople don't know anything. They don't understand what they're doing. Right? They're out of the crazy. So we tend to downplay the importance of sales, right? But if you want to be an entrepreneur, sales is extremely important. So I want to, can you talk a little bit more about, sales and things that you think are important and how a developer can become a better salesperson?
I think it starts by recognizing the importance of it. Once you realize how important sales is and how important persuasion and marketing is, then you've got a better chance. I mean, I've learned a lot from you, Bruno, actually, when it comes to marketing and sales. I really have. But I learned from a lot of people around there. You need to educate yourself, because most programmers, and I include myself in that, are not very good at that type of thing. I made this new course. I'll show it to you. It's called Jappies 2. It's a course for complete beginners in Java. I've never done any Java programming before, to get started in programming. And you can see there's no sales pitch yet. And the course it's really, I mean, it's a really nice little course. It's really fun. But there's this part of the sales, I couldn't do it. And I really struggled with it. And I was doing a recording for it. This is a funny story, right? It's a funny story because I've got the Stream Deck. It's this little device here, this thing. And the Stream Deck has all these buttons on it, right, for changing, the different views. I can change it to this and that, and, different views I can have here, all sorts of different views. And one of the views is go live, right? One of the buttons is go live. And I didn't realize I was trying to record a sales pitch for this course. And I just couldn't do it. I mean, I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried. And I was like, try it again and try it again. But what I didn't realize, that accidentally I'd pressed the go live button whilst trying to do this sales pitch. So if you watch that, because hundreds of people watch that live, right? Me trying to literally do the sales pitch and just completely messing it up over and over again. What I'm saying, Bruno, is I'm not a good person to give any advice on these matters, because I'm terrible at this as well. It's very hard, and I have to keep on learning new things and new tricks all the time. I think the first thing is in your mind, right? You got to change your mind, and I'll give you a little story, because it will help to explain sort of what I mean by changing your mind. What I mean by that. And we had a friend. We have a friend. She's not here anymore, but we had a friend who was a stewardess at Ryanair. Now, Ryanair is a bit aggressive when it comes to sales. And so she's good. She's really good at selling, but she hated that part, and she's always cringing, and And I said to her, "Okay, listen, let's have a chat." So we talked for a while, and I explained to her that if you're flying from A to B, you dehydrate just for your skin, right? You just dehydrate. So it's in your best interest to drink water whilst you're flying. Water is very important. You need water to drink. So if the stewardess does not sell water, then she is doing me a disservice by not selling me water. Now, if I fly with a normal commercial airline, I'm also paying for water, but one cup of water costs about $20 or $30 for a glass of water. And you go like, how can it be so much? Well, because it's in the price, right? The only difference between Ryanair and the other airline is the glass of water. And so that's $30 for the glass of water. So if she sells it for $3, that's actually quite a bit cheaper. So, and all of these airlines are the same, the charter airlines, that what you want, you pay and you get it. So I had one session, I talked to her about this, and she's like, okay. And then I said, I said, listen, you know that the perfume you sell is cheaper than if you buy it at a shop in the street. It is cheaper, because I checked the prices. I took her price, I took the shop prices, and her prices were cheaper. And I said, you're doing a disfavor to the guys and the girls who are flying by not selling them the perfume. So she started understanding that there's actually value in selling. You're helping someone by selling them something. I mean, if you, for example, do this Entrepreneurially course, it will change your life, right? And it's going to cost you like $50 and you've changed your life. I mean, that's a really great win. If you do one of my Super Pack courses, so that's more expensive. It's like $1,870. That's more expensive, but that will totally change your life. You'll become like I've seen it with people who've done the courses. So I know it's a lot of money, but it really changes the life. And that's the same thing with my wonderful friend. And so she started applying this in her mind, just sort of thinking, she's not ripping them off. She's actually helping them to feel better and to solve problems. And she became the best salesperson in Crete, for sure. I think in Greece, but for sure in Crete, she became the best salesperson, top sales. And then she went to another country, and there she also became the top salesperson there as well. So just from 2 sessions, I mean, she's a natural salesperson. She's not a geek. She's very good at human interaction. But this is something that we need to learn as programmers. It's really important to sell. It's really important. Because if you don't sell, others don't get the benefit of what you're offering. And then your product will just vanish. It'll just disappear. Without the money coming in, you cannot continue developing your product. So this is why it's really important to sell. All right.
Okay, very cool. There's all kinds of comments here. So Steve asked, are there any books or resources you recommend for persuasion? Do you think persuasion is an important thing for a salesperson?
I'm not so sure. I mean, I recently listened to Cialdini. I think The Art of Influence or something like that. But I don't really want to persuade people as such. I mean, there are some persuasion things that work. And the funny thing is they work even if you know what the person's doing, they still work on you. But I don't really want to operate in that level too much. I think that for us as programmers, it's better to change our mindset that what we are doing is actually good and useful to the world, right? And once we convince ourselves that what we are doing is good and useful to somebody else, then you don't need to persuade anymore. You just have to basically show, in a nice way what you have, and people buy it. But I mean, so Cialdini is quite good. I mean, I've read some books by Scott Adams. He's got some very, very good books. He's gone into a slightly different angle nowadays. He's into all sorts of politics and stuff. But some of his older books are very interesting on persuasion. But yeah, I would say that. What else? See, there's something about John Green. I've come across.
Yeah. So John says that he comes across. I think that's like a comment from what I was talking about, right? He say that programs are being frustrated with being forced to change roadmaps to fit sales, but not undervaluing sales, right? It's obviously needed to pay salaries. So John, yes, of course there's a lot of developers that do understand the importance of sales, but there's also a lot of them that undervalue the importance. So I think there's both ways, right? I've come across a lot of technical people. I mean, I've worked on a company in the marketing team, right? And I have a lot of technical people coming straight forward and saying, why are you guys doing this, or but it's part of it. I've done that. I myself have done that. Had undervalued the sales guys, saying, oh yes, they don't know
me too.
Right? But I think that I think you agree a lot with you. There's a lot of times that sales don't really understand the value of software developers, and I think that's also true. So I mean, that is, they would ignore technical concerns and assume everything is possible, right? So I do understand that there is like a I'm not sure if mistrust is the right word, but I'm going to use it. Like there's a kind of mistrust between developers and salespeople sometimes. And I think that's a lack of understanding on both sides. So what we can do in our side is that I think we should understand better in terms of sales. I actually just realized I have the camera off. So I think in our side we can do better to understand a little bit how sales work, but and then maybe that helps educate sales too.
I'm going to say something which you won't like, but programmers are not that valuable. And I'm saying that as a programmer, right? You can write software, and that's great, right? But if you can't sell that software, it's useless. It's a waste of time. So in terms of money, in terms of pure cash, the programmer is not as valuable as we think we are, right? I know that if we create the right products and they get sold properly, then we can add a tremendous value to a company. But that's if it gets sold properly. I've got one experience where I was working with a company. I was a director of a company, and I decided to hire as a general manager a sales guy, and I should have had a technical guy. Like everybody would have said, you need a technical person for that job, and I said no, I would really prefer a salesperson for that job, as a general manager, which was exactly the right choice because he could sell ice cream to Eskimos. Or that you don't say that anymore, do you? Okay, I apologize to all Eskimos and everybody. But he could sell, let me say, olive oil to Greeks. Put it that way. He could sell olives to Cretans. That's what he could do. Right. So you need that if you want to run a company. If you're an employee, it doesn't matter because it's somebody else's problem. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to run a company, and the thing is that as programmers, we need to know enough about sales that we understand what is involved in the sales process. So you can hire salespeople, but only once you've learned yourself how to sell. Until you've learned that, then it's dangerous to hire a salesperson because he will do a sell trick on you and you'll get ripped off badly. Yeah, John, I also agree. The book Sales Dog is quite good because it's the Sales Dog's book shows different types of salespeople, which is valuable as well. I like that too.
That's awesome, man. Really, really good. So John makes a comment on this. He says, no part of the body has value on its own, right? They each work together and recognize the value of the cooperation. The way I was going to say, the way I would say what Heinz just said, is that if you are a programmer or software developer, that the biggest problem that you solve is writing code, I think that has little value. Right, but so I think that the biggest thing that we have to understand as developers is that for us to be more valuable for our companies, for our lives, for our careers, we need to solve the biggest problems we're able to solve. And what I see in developers that, yes, we are able to solve amazingly big problems, right? But a lot of times all we think about is that, oh, I'm going to choose the right programming language, right? All we think about is how do I write my code? I want to forget everything else. I don't understand the business. I don't understand how the company makes money. I don't understand any of that. So I'm trying to solve this tiny little problem of writing code. And, I think there are some developers that there are writing code for extremely sophisticated problems, and that's very valuable.
Yeah, of course.
So Heinz, I'm making the ways of everyone here, right? I'm asking Heinz the things that I want to know. So if you're watching us here, tell us, what is your biggest challenge you're facing right now in terms of launching your product, or launching your company, or creating your own business, right? So we can talk a little bit about that. But Heinz, from what I understand, I think that we are pretty similar in this situation. I think you're running, what I would call like a one-person company, right? I mean, you might have some people that work with you, but I think that's it's not like a big company or anything like this, right? So you're running a small company. Am I right with that?
I've been involved in different types of companies.
Right. Okay.
So
but
at the moment it's basically it's one-man company. Well, it's not one man.
Right.
It's actually a couple of people. But it's not large.
Yeah.
It's not a large company.
Yeah. We kind of call it one main company. It's like, there's a few people and some contractors, and you might do freelancing a lot, right? Yeah. So and I think this is for me, even if you don't have your business, right, as a developer, I think that you should be you should be working for yourself, right? That's kind of thing I think. So, do you think it's possible, or are you being able to have a good life and everything by running a very small company, or do you think that we necessarily need to expand and be like a big business at some point?
So I've been I was a director for quite a long time, about 15 years or so, of my late father's factory. I helped along there, and that was a lot of stress, and the more people you have working in your company, generally most of the time the more stress you get from it, and not necessarily the more money you get. I mean, what I've got now is basically my choice. I didn't want to expand to a huge organization because I really enjoy what I'm doing. I really enjoy tinkering around and trying out this and trying out that, and not having a huge payroll that I have to be responsible for. So you can certainly do very well as a small business, and in fact, you can carry on. If you're a small business, you can carry on doing the things you really enjoy doing without having to sacrifice yourself and just do health and welfare. Because that's unfortunately how it normally ends up, is you become this technical person, you really enjoy technology, and then you hire more people, and you hire more people, and you hire more people, and after a while you've got all these people working for you, and all you're doing is doing budgets and reports and this and that. And I've been in that to some extent, and it's not fun. It's not a lot of it's not very entertaining to worry about those things. You've got government regulations, and I mean, even a small business like I've got is really complicated, because you have to do you have to make sure the accounting gets done properly, and you have to there are a lot of different hats that you're wearing if you're running a business. And if you go too big, then it becomes even more, and you actually get away from the part which you really enjoy. I see this quite often. I get emails from people on my newsletter, and there might have been a newsletter reader a long time ago, and then they would say, now all I'm doing is leave forms and stuff like that, boring stuff, not the fun stuff anymore. And that's a great pity. Why sacrifice that? Why? That's what I'm saying.
Right. So it's kind of we're right at the top of the hour here. Let me just kind of give a quick
Yeah,
announcement here.
this.
So first of all, Heinz, let me tell you this. The next speaker is Kirk, right?
Oh,
And
good, excellent. Haha.
and he did message that he would be a little bit late. So I'm not sure how much late he's going to be, right? So
he's walking. He's going on a hike somewhere in the wilderness of Canada. He's probably being chased by a bear right now.
Yeah, I think he got stuck on some kind of meeting. It's actually less fun, but so he asked if we could continue the conversation until he shows up, right? So that's an invitation for you if you want to do that. But just kind of let everyone know that we're in the top of the hour. So right now there's several sessions that are going to be started. We're going to continue here, me and Heinz, having this conversation here. But right now there's several sessions starting. I'm just going to quickly read them out here so you guys know what they're going on. So we're going to start here with Kirk Pepperdine here in the chat, but me and Heinz is going to continue. And then Jim Betancourt is going to start talking about getting started with cucumbers, right? So if you want to discuss that with Jim, you can go to his room. And Autug Autintas, I'm not sure how the best way to pronounce his name, but Autug is gonna be talking about domain storytelling, and he's actually doing a mentoring session, right? So he's going to be very interactive there. So if you guys want to go there, that's a good moment to be there. So Heinz, you're okay with continuing a little bit more, right?
Absolutely. We should start talking about Kirk.
Right. Let's start talking about Kirk.
All funny stories about Kirk. So I'll tell you a story about Kirk. So Kirk and I gave a talk together in, I think it was Belgium. And this was a joint talk. So I was like really excited about this. Has he arrived? Or?
Yeah,
he's here now. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll tell the story just to introduce Kirk.
Tell the story and I'll work with him here. Don't worry.
Okay. So Kirk and I we got this talk together, and shortly before the talk, he sort of distracted me, and put up the slides, and all of a sudden he in my slide deck he'd put in two pictures. One was of some goats in Crete, and the other one was of some knights fighting in Hungary, and that was his introduction. So be very careful of Kirk. What do I do? You need to come to the stage and join us.
Yeah. So Kirk, Kirk, you need to come to this stage, and please see your tweet because the link is there, right? So let me tell you this thing, Heinz. So Kirk was talking to me, and we're thinking about what we're going to do here in this conversation, everything. And he wanted to talk about all kinds of different things. But one thing that he said, you know what? I work with Heinz a lot, and Heinz had this, like the story you told us here, right? He has his father and his grandfather and all his family. It's very business oriented, and so Kirk said, I didn't have a father that told me those things, right? Yeah. So actually, the conversation that he wanted to have here is, things that my father had told me that I learned with Kirk, right?
I saw that. I tweeted that. I saw this is brilliant. It's like I'm talking about stuff my father did tell me, and Kirk said, I wish my father told me this stuff.
Right, exactly. And the reason why he wanted to do this is because he knows exactly that story, right? So I think it's going to be a back-to-back conversation. That's going to be awesome. So actually, and at the moment we are talking about him, that he comes, right? So let's just see. So Kirk Pepperdine is here with us on the stage.
Can you finally hear me?
Now we can.
There's Kirk.
There you are. Nice story, but that was really fun because the look on your face when you saw the goat come up was just priceless. The audience just, they're just looking at it going like, what's the goat doing up there?
It's like random goats on the Cretan street. It's like, what is my slide deck?
It's really fun. Yeah, I don't think Bruno did the justice. I mean, Heinz, I just love listening to you talk about, some of the things that your father did and everything like that. And my father had the traditional career path. He basically, he worked for Bell Canada And then he worked for Trans-Canada Telephone Company. Essentially the same thing, right? And that's where he didn't start his career there, but effectively his career was there. And then he retired from there, right? And that's a traditional career. And
I wish I'd seen that, because I've got no clue about that stuff.
Yeah, I know. And I think a lot of people, well, maybe people my age, I mean, not so much anymore, really have that type of experience where their parents are just like, go to work at 8, come home at 5, and they work at the same company like forever and ever and ever. Yeah. And ever, and then all of a sudden they're retired, and that's it. And there's a nice stability to the whole thing, and there's nothing, and a calmness to the whole thing that I guess I experienced that you didn't, because your dad's off like doing this and doing that, and it's like we only get one apricot tonight, so we need to share it between you and all your brothers and sisters.
One of the funniest things was he would come home like once every 3 months or so. He'd come home with all these metal look like metal gears, like just Jag things, and they were like a big box of these things. And what we had to do is we had to, like, all the boys come here, and we had to take these put them in heaps of like 10 or something. So like get these discs in heaps of 10. They were coming big, and put them all in heaps of 10. And then but he had this huge markup. I think he had like a 1,000% markup on that stuff. And he'd like get these things, put them into heaps, and then resell them. And these were discs for floor polishing machines, which were polishing like concrete. I've got no idea how he got into this and how, but this weird things happened all the time.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, the oddest thing ever is like we met online initially because Heinz is in South Africa. We both became Java champions, and actually, I think we met slightly before that, just randomly through
for about 6 months before.
Yeah, it was something like that, and then so we're talking about Java and all these deep Java things, and then out of the blue comes, oh, I have to go over to my straw factory. I'm like, what? Straw factory? What the heck is a straw factory? Why are you talking about straws? It's just
a shrimp factory.
Every time I see them lying around, I feel a little bit guilty about all these billions of straws being made.
So you're responsible for all of the plastic in my diet now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you inherited a straw factory. It's like,
that's right.
Who would have thought? It's like, this is a crazy thing. But the thing is, though, if you have the 9-to-5 job where everything is predictable and stuff like that, then everything is predictable. And there's just so many things that we've encountered in running our separate businesses. You're just like talking to each other, like and I know I'm saying stuff, and you're going like, rookie novice facepalm moment, because I saw my dad do that like 100 times, and you really learned a lot of these lessons from him, and it really shows in how you conduct yourself and how you conduct your businesses and how you've organized yourself, and so it's from my perspective, it's really nice to watch. It's just really nice to watch it, because I'm going like, wow, look at all this stuff, and it's like I never thought of that, or I wouldn't have thought of that, and it's so obvious that we need to do this, and even some of the decision making you're looking at it's just, I think it's how it's been influenced by your upbringing. It's just really it's really amazing, and I think the experiences you had with your father are so much different than mine. I don't want to disparage my dad. I've had many good experiences with them, but they're just so different. And given where we both have ended up, it's like your experiences have turned out to be so much different. I wouldn't say, I don't want to say the word useful, but just more applicable, I think, for your life experience and everything. I mean, you're running effectively a training consultancy business on Crete, like in the middle of nowhere. And
yeah.
and if you think of all of the problems that you have to face on a day-to-day basis just to make that work, it's amazing. Just following your internet connectivity issues is one thing. Like you went from like jaw-dropping expenses to something now I guess is more normal. It's just everything day to day. It's just amazing.
Kirk, I've got to just relate one thing which I've learned from you in terms of business, and this is a really important point. And I think that because we started before you came, we were talking about sales, and the one thing which Kirk kept on telling me, and I didn't listen to him in the beginning, is if you get a big like a big customer, or even a small customer, pick up the damn phone and phone them and speak to them. Don't just send an email. Pick up the phone and speak to them. And I've started doing that. I know you used to give me hell about that because I'm talking about like a long time ago. It's 2005, 2006. And I'd say, I don't actually know if this is a real contract or not. I'm not sure if they really are real or if they really want. And you'd say, have you phoned them? And I'd say, no, I don't know if I should phone them. They said, pick up the phone. It's 20,000 euros. Pick up the phone. They go like, I don't know. And we send them an email. They go like, no, pick up the phone.
Just go for it.
And now I do that, and this is a tip that I can give to the people is if you get an inquiry, pick up the phone and speak to them. And what very often happens is you get an inquiry, you phone them, and actually what they were looking for is completely different to what you thought they were looking for, and you clear that up in 2 minutes, and you either get a really big deal or you get nothing, but you've saved yourself an hour of composing an email, the perfect email. Which so this is a tip which I've used a lot thanks to you, Kirk.
And Peter Carruthers too, actually. Should we plug Peter Carruthers in here because he says the same bloody thing? Right?
Yeah, but it takes 2 or 3 people to learn. But you told me long before you told me that. This comes from you.
Yes. Well, the other thing too is like I think was one of the funniest situations is when we were sitting in the hotel room in Vegas.
That was ridiculous. That was completely ridiculous.
I think you tell the story better than I do. But there's a lot.
Right, so I flew from South Africa to London, and then London to Las Vegas to speak at a conference. What was it called?
TSSJS Vegas.
Yeah, yeah. So it was a really nice conference, and but I flew so long that they felt sorry for me, and they gave me this double suite. It was so big that when like my buddies came to visit, they got lost in the room. We didn't know where they were. It literally was that big. I had 2 jacuzzis, not one. I had 2 jacuzzis in Las Vegas. It was just enormous. And then I went to Kirk's room, and I expected Kirk to have an even bigger room, and he had this closet. It was like basically we're like sitting next to each other on the chair. They're trying to find some space. And so this is where I learned Kirk's trick, or it's a trick which we all use nowadays, called the self-defense quote. Right, the self-defense quote.
Yeah. Well, I guess Okay.
And so what happened is Kirk was talking to the customer, and I was sitting there listening and the customer wanted Kirk to come and fix their problem. Kirk did not want to go and fix the problem, not because he was malicious.
Road trip. I wanted to go home.
You've been on the road for 4 weeks already. You wanted to go home. So it's like, I'm done. I'm going home. Right? And the customer said, we really want to come. And Kirk told them exactly how to fix their problem. I'm sitting there like, don't tell them so much. Like, don't. Quiet. Shh, it's enough. You say, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. You tell them exactly what to do, right? And the funniest bit was when they asked how much is it going to cost, and he named the price, and I was sitting there like trying not to laugh. It was a ridiculous amount of money.
Oh, and I quoted in the wrong currency. I said in euros, not US dollars.
And then he said, and he's like, da 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 da, and he said euro. And there was like a silence on the other side of the phone. And the customer was like, oh my goodness, this person is charging a lot of money. and they said to him, we'll have to speak to the board about that, which is always that's always the response you want, okay? Because I've done jobs where my charge was like basically coffee, And the good thing is because Kirk and the phone back, how long was it? Like 2 hours later?
30 minutes.
30 minutes later, phone back said he got the job.
Yes, they said, when can you come in, right? And I think I was like about 50 or 60% over my normal rate, and I put your euro at that time was like 40% additional on top.
This was ridiculous. It was one-on-one, right? It was like a huge difference.
Like a doubling of the rate and everything like that. But Heinz, what I did in that particular instance, right? That project was already down $750,000, and
you saved a lot of money.
And it was a lead-in to a contract that was worth a massive amount of money, right? Yeah. So even the amount I charged, even though it was like a huge amount of money, it was peanuts. It was noise compared to what actually ended up being at the end. And so the value I provided was really good. So I think the lesson learned was that in the interviewing process, by being so precise in what I said, they knew I was going to come in and solve the problem at that point. So I displayed my expertise. They didn't have the capacity or the understanding to execute it themselves. So they needed someone to come in. So I just actually done the perfect sales job in terms of saying, you need me to come in, right? And I did do a defensive quote, but I said it at the point where I said, well, if I get it, I'm going to call my wife, and yeah, she's going to be unhappy until she hears what the check amount will look like in the bank account. So whatever pain and suffering is going to be, and it's going to be like, it's now actually worth it.
Either way you win, right? You either combine extra stuff for your family, or you don't. You go home. Both.
Right.
Both.
I give
the
them enough information to actually do the job anyways properly.
Yeah, they could have done it. Absolutely.
They could have done
what you told.
Yeah, exactly. I remember the follow-up. You called me afterwards and said, oh, and I said, hey, look at this chart of data and everything like that. I said, how long did it take you to find that? I said, yeah, about I don't know, but it's like about an hour after I walked through the door, given that I had to do meet and greet and talk to the CEO and
so how many thousands of lines of code did you have to write to fix the problem?
13. And on my exit interview, the CEO asked me, how many lines of code did I actually have to write to fix the problem? I said 13. And he looked at me and he says, those are the 13 most expensive lines of code I've ever paid for.
Well, one interesting thing about charging a lot. One interesting thing about charging expensive is that sometimes you need the attention of the board, right? To actually get things done, because a lot of people. No, a lot of people will, a lot of times you come in and you say what needs to be done, and the developers don't want to do it, or the manager doesn't get the time. They don't involve the database guys to actually listen to you. They don't participate on anything. So there's nothing that you can do. But then you charge something that's expensive, and then they stop everyone and say, look, this guy's really expensive. Go talk to him, and then the problem is actually solve it, right? So a lot of times. This plays a big role there too.
Okay, we gotta roll back to Heinz here. Heinz has a perfect story for this. It's your South African story where you went in and undercharged.
Oh, it's happened so many times.
But this never came back to hurt you. It actually hurt you.
So what happened with me was I had a job, and I thought it was a programming job. So I spoke to the customer on the phone because I thought it was like, I'm going to be there for maybe a month or so, just coding some business logic, and it actually what they actually needed was just a consultant. So I charged a price, and the price was really low. I mean, it was way too low for even for programming was quite low over there. And so when I got there, sorry, on the phone, I diagnosed the problem and I solved the problem for them. Like when I first spoke to them, I said, he told me this and this. I said, no, that's not the problem. It's something else. This is your problem, and here's how to solve it. And then I went to the customer, and again, they told me what the problem was. I solved the problem. I told them how to solve it, and all their focus on was my price, and they tried to push down my price. And I was going like, seriously, you tried to push down my price? It's so low anyway. And so eventually I spent 2 weeks trying to do the stuff they told me to do. And I won't tell you because you'll be full of your chairs with laughter, the things that they thought I should do. And eventually I managed to somehow persuade them that what I was saying was in fact correct. And then they listened to me. So they actually lost a lot of time and money because I undercharged.
So yes, that's not a strange thing.
Yeah, and Steve says here, right, that there are case stories where product sales have improved when the price was raised by quite a lot, right? And Umar says amazing. So I think so Stevens also says general contractors have learned in the US to give outrageous quotes when people seek them out if they're not busy. This is known as a screw you quote. $20,000 for bathroom remodel, for example. Sometimes people take. Well, actually, the thing that I think a lot of times is exactly what Heinz was talking before, is that sometimes it's I'm not really interested in actually doing the work unless it's very worth, right? Because there's a lot of work that people want us to do that maybe it's not interesting for you. Because maybe not being the technology that you want to do, maybe it doesn't advance your own objectives, right? It could be a work that you do, but it doesn't advance your own objectives. So if you get a job like this and you put a price that is high enough for if they want you to do, then you'd be happy with doing it, right? But it's high enough for you to not get the job. I think that's what Steven's talking about here with the screw you quote, right? That's when you're busy, you're only going to get a job that's like very well paid.
Yeah. Oh, Heinz has disappeared for a second. Maybe he's got something to drink. I just came off a 4-hour webinar. I was just presenting a webinar on solving Java memory leaks.
Yeah. I was on at the same time with you. I was doing dynamic proxies. I wanted to go to your talk, and I was like, oh man, I can't go because I'm doing my own.
Oh, you've seen it before. You know everything. It's okay.
But you get paid per visitor, so I was going to be there. And
yes.
Learn one or two new things, and have some fun.
Yeah.
Send some questions through. Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question, Kirk.
Yes, sir.
So you've sort of done what we all dream of, right? You've created a company, and you've sold to Microsoft, sold the company to Microsoft. So this is like when I was at university, it's like that's what everybody was going to do. We're going to create a company and we're going to sell it to Microsoft. So that's what I want to hear about, because it's enough about all the stupid stuff we do with quoting and so on. I want to hear about that amazing deal and how you did that.
It was never my plan. I never wanted to sell a company to Microsoft, ever.
But you wanted to sell to somebody, right? Google, Microsoft, IBM, Red Hat. Who cares? VMware, who cares?
Well,
everybody wants that. Come and retire on a Greek island. That's it.
Right.
What more do you want, right?
Yeah, come on, guys. You're retired in a Greek island, man. You're doing everything you want in a Greek island. So why are you complaining?
Well, I'm much farther away from that Greek island at the moment than I would like to be. But yes, But yes, yeah. So yeah, it's a funny plan. I mean, I think, if you look at a career path, I probably had one of the stranger ones, or maybe highly non-traditional. I mean, I started, my first education, I came out from biochemistry. And then I worked in a university research lab, and then I worked for National Research Council of Canada in a research lab doing biochemistry stuff, right? But when I went to university, we went through a huge economic downturn, meaning that there just simply weren't any summer jobs. So I decided to take some computer courses over the summer instead of working. And at that point, I was mixing, and probably actually I was the only person in my class that had any computer skills. And that was a differentiator. I mean, I sucked as a biochemist, honestly. I was horrible, right? I ended up almost killing myself being a biochemist. But, people wanted me because they couldn't find anyone who could do the lab work. Well, as I said, they couldn't find anyone who could actually do any of the computer work. I mean, that's less of a problem now. I mean, people come to the table with much more computer skills than they did back then. And then eventually it was just a matter of I went back and got another degree in math after I almost killed myself in the lab. And thought, yeah, computer is much safer than working with all of these chemicals, ether with open flame, and anyways, lots of fun.
So I can really imagine. I'm really bad at that stuff. I would have blown something up for sure.
Well, the blowing up would have been cool, right? At least but it's the silent stuff that actually gets you. And so I went off and started doing pure computer work afterwards. But as a result, I sort of come with this very strong experimental background, much stronger than most people actually infinitely stronger than most people in computing science come out with, right? Experimental process. Understanding how to run experiments and dealing with experiments. So when we actually got into the early stages of what we call supercomputing and distributed computing and doing things like that, we actually people would start saying oh, we need to figure out how fast things are going and stuff like that. And I'd look at it, go okay, that's easy. Experimental process, you do and bang, and everyone's going wow, okay, that's how you set up a benchmark. We didn't know, and actually, one of our first efforts, actually ended up, and I ended up on a team. We won the Prime Minister's Award for Excellence, or something like that. So it was really kind of fun. Yeah, it was weird. We were working for the government of Canada, and they were giving out awards like that.
The Prime Minister, you mean in Canada, or what?
Prime Minister of Canada. Okay. The Privy Council would award it, actually, which was kind of cool. Which and then you go through some gyrations and stuff like that, because I never really had a plan. That's the whole thing, right? I didn't plan on selling a company to Microsoft. I didn't plan on starting a company. There's just this is everyone's saying plan.
You also started J Clarity quite late in life, didn't you?
Well, because I did biochemistry for a number of years, I started computing science a little later in life also, right? So yeah, so as you can see, I'm a little later in life and everything like that. But probably at the age of 50 is when we started a startup, right? Which is a perfect age to start a startup. But really, I think J Clarity doesn't happen without any of the experiences that I had before. So even though there didn't seem to be a plan, looking backwards, looking forward, I think there always was in the back of my mind, was remaining technical and just sort of keep applying all of the things that I learned going forward, and just having the strong experimental background from running all these experiments in the labs and just having to write papers for journals and stuff like that, meant that actually when it came to solving performance issues and things like that, for me it was just like, squiggly lines on paper, look at it, that's what that means, you get a model in and drop it in, bang, all of a sudden, things come out the other end. And it's really the models that help you understand what's going on, right? So we're always building models, build models, build models, build models. The funny story is that by the time I come out in 2005, remember where I flew down to Cape Town to visit you because we went to Johannesburg yes, where I hit your customer in the head with a piece of chocolate.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, and you took out the lights for the entire complex.
No, it was the whole city, Kirk. The whole city. What do you mean?
The whole city, all of Johannesburg. Yeah. So obviously we have more stories there. And on the flight down, I actually woke up, scribbled down some stuff in a notebook, and which was basically a model that I, the thing is about teaching, right? So at that time I worked with Jack Shirazi, of course, wrote the very popular Java performance tuning for O'Reilly. And we'd started the workshop together, performance tuning. And I got into the situation where I'm saying, like, okay, people aren't getting it. They're not getting it. It's not that the people are not smart. I think, these were incredibly talented people and everything like that. They're not getting it. They're doing things that should be simple and it's not happening, right? So I'm always thinking in my mind, okay, like, this is my fault. It's not that they're stupid. I'm not delivering the material properly. How can I, so I'm always had this thought process, how can I be better at delivering things so that people are more effective and they get it and they can make the stuff more useful. And so what I wrote down in my notebook when I was sleeping on my 12-hour flight from Frankfurt to Cape Town was I woke up and jotted down this little diagram with a few notes and then went back to sleep. Popped into Heinz's living room in the morning and I said, okay, now we need to write our talk. And I said, this is going to be the basis of our talk. And I showed Heinz. And you looked at it and your reaction to me was just priceless. It, boosted my ego 100%, or like really big, where you said, that's brilliant, right? And we wrote our own whole talk around that. And that little diagram that I wrote was actually the basis for J Clarity.
Really?
Okay. That's why we started J Clarity, was because of that diagram. Okay. And I'm thinking J Clarity doesn't come about if I don't have the background, the experimental backgrounds, right? It doesn't come about if I'm not doing the workshop and writing. So these are all key things because they help crystallize all of these ideas and they put them out there and people push back against them and test and it's like yesterday, one of my colleagues just pushed out an intrinsic for the JVM to do MD5 work, which gives us a 70x speed up and everything like that. And the trolls hit him, saying, oh, you've been wasting your time doing everything like that. And I was thinking, man, I miss trolls. I haven't had trolls for a while because I haven't been writing for a while. But there you go. There you go. And the trolls are nice because if you get past the caustic part of it, there's actually sometimes some very useful information in their posts. And then, so yeah, this is an early version of the whole thing. And as you can see, what I did was I tried to bring some structure into performance tuning. And I said that at the time, no one else was bringing structure into performance tuning. It's very ad hoc. Even today, it's very ad hoc. Brendan Gregg is the only person that I see really attempting to bring structure into performance tuning. We just looked at some Intel stuff a couple of weeks ago when we were talking to the Intel people, and we noticed that they're starting to see ways that they can bring structure into performance tuning. But we wrote this slide in 2005, and I think it's one of the first attempts I'm not going to say it's the first attempt, but obviously, I mean, anyone who says that is well,
ignorant,
fooling themselves. But I think we're in the Java space. We're definitely a very, very early on attempt to bring structure into the performance tuning space, and really, when we think about it, it's without all of these different experiences that I had, I don't think J-Clarity would have happened. And even when J-Clarity happened, I mean, like 9 out of 10 startups just failed within their first year. And we almost went down that path because we didn't focus on the right thing. We thought we were, but we quickly learned that we didn't focus on the right thing. And fortunately, for I don't know how, we managed to be able to pivot and to be able to start focusing on the right thing, and that's Illuminate. Illuminate is our product, and at the core of our product are the ideas that are developed really from this particular thing, this particular tool. It's a diagnostic.
So what's happened to Illuminate now, Kirk?
What's that?
What has happened to Illuminate?
Well, okay, so funny thing is, in 2019, Microsoft came along and snapped us up because Microsoft wants to enter the Java market in a stronger position. So they're starting to dedicate resources across the company to support running Java workflows on Azure. And so they hired a bunch of us because we're big in the community. So Microsoft is buying some community street cred, and they wanted to form a group around our company, our Java engineering group. And we looked at it and said, well, okay, if they're going to follow principles of working in the community and working with the community, then of course that follows our values. So that's one thing I think Heinz and I have always done, is we've followed our values very strongly, and our values are very strongly towards community, which is again why we could start J-Crete and run that particular conference. But anyways, so Microsoft came in and they said, okay, well, these are the things that they want. We like the tooling. So at the moment, I think we got the go-ahead just last week to open source Sensum, which unfortunately has been pulled completely from the market. So it's only used by Microsoft and Microsoft subsidiaries at the moment, and some company in Switzerland, which will remain nameless. So we had to do things to get Sensum usable in that type of environment, and so we've been working on that. So Illuminate's sort of been lying a little bit dormant, but now we're picking up customers with Illuminate, and we're going to use it in a number of live scenarios. So I think one of the things about going to Microsoft, it's okay. So we got some small bag of money, not out of the whole thing, but you have to look at it slightly differently, in that there's a huge opportunity in the sense that within Microsoft, I can do things with Illuminate that I could never have done on my own.
Yeah, sure.
That's the reason that was one of the main reasons for going was that all of a sudden we have a huge playground called Azure.
Uh-huh.
And we have bags and bags of data that we didn't have access to before, and we can use that to actually make this engine like a reality. And you think that this is a dream that started crystallizing in around 2006 or so. When was that? Johannesburg, 2006, something like that.
Yeah.
And
copyright 2006, Kirk Pepperdine and Heinz Kabutz. So yes.
Yeah. And it started formulating and really crystallizing maybe about 2008 when I was looking at it. Gee, I wish there was some heuristics that we could develop to do this stuff, because this is fuzzy and it requires humans to think about this. And and can we get a machine to do that? And then finally, we finally get the right people together in around 2012. And we start writing the heuristic engine. So we get it out into customer environments, and we go through this whole process of taking something that's conceptually like a weird Baco idea and productizing it. to the point now where we're looking at it going like, we can actually have this thing running in every instance in Azure. And it's not only the the Java engineering team that's now interested in it. We have .NET is interested in it, and we have other groups within Microsoft that are trying to use AI, artificial intelligence, and other tech heuristics to improve the performance of workloads. Are interested in the techniques, right? And really, to me, even more than the sale of jQuery to Microsoft and what that means is like, I have this idea that I've been working on for so long, and I finally see that there's a route that it escapes from me and gets into more people and just grows from there. And to me, that's just exceptionally satisfying. And I think it's taken a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of thought, and just a lot of effort to get to this point. So it's not something that you saw where it happened overnight, where one day we're start a company and the next day, bang, Microsoft comes along and buys us for $1 billion.
It took a long time. I mean, I remember the many discussions we had when you were getting this whole thing off the ground, and it's not easy, especially because you were paying developers, and developers are not normally not the cheapest in the world. You had offices in London, and I remember how tough it was, and it took a long time. I mean, you sold it last year, if that's right. If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And you started in 2012 at J-Crete with I think you started speaking to Ben, and Martin joined later on.
Yeah.
So it's a long time. That's a long time to hold your breath. 2012 is 8 years of holding your breath, 7 years of holding your breath. There's a question by Scott. What do you think are the most useful skill sets that help you to succeed?
Writing.
I think it's an interesting question.
Writing, I think, is the #1 skill set. That writing, yeah. That's writing did more for me than just about anything else that I've done. Just write, right? And I've noticed the difference. I've stopped writing recently because writing is painful for me. I hate it. It's nothing I enjoy. I actually forced myself to do it because I knew I needed to, and I knew that I was horrible at it. And Heinz, you can attest to how bad I am at actually writing, because I always send drafts to you and you just tear them apart.
Oh, they're bad. They're really bad. They're terrible. Sorry, they really are bad.
But eventually they turn out good.
Writing is that important? I mean, your finished product's always good, but I mean, yeah, it takes a long time to get there.
Yeah, where other people, they just sort of like crank them out, right?
Yeah, I remember, I did this book on dynamic proxies. Bruno says writing is complicated for him too. I did this book on dynamic proxies, and I asked the whole community to help me, and luckily they did, because the end result is much better than it would have been. But then I got Brian Gertz actually wrote a foreword for me, which I'm putting into the second edition, and he just cranked it out. It's like, okay, there you go, boom. It's like he just writes poetry,
Sometimes that happens, though, right? Like I wrote a document yesterday, and I just once through, did the review, we're done, right? And it's beautiful. It works. And sometimes it's just you're just staring at the page, and you write stuff, and it's like going like facepalm, it's horrible. And more often it's the facepalm than anything else. But I think it was just something, and I did get better with it over time, but it's something that I had to continuously keep doing. And now that I stopped, I can't get back. And so you have to, it's just one of those things. But you think about writing around 2001 when I wrote the Ant Developer Handbook with a couple of people.
Yeah.
I actually ended up writing about not 50% of the book, but close to.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. I really had no idea. I thought you were just one of like 10 people who added a few things here or there. Like the 97 things every programmer should do, right? Like that one.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe explain to the people listening what ant is, right?
Yeah, what is ant? Yeah. Well, that's hilarious. I actually happen to have a. Oops. Okay. I actually happen to have my copy here.
Oh, right.
Right. So all the authors were together, except for there's really funny here, right? Eric Hunter's in here. He wrote a competing book at the same time, but so I autographed his book and he autographed mine. He said, "This is weird, but you know what the hell? It's fun." He's a great guy. Yeah, he wrote for another publisher and everything like that. And so, that was, and then I got a kick from the other thing in I think in our careers, there's always somebody that along the way that gives you a kick here and there. And I think without these people, you just don't make it. And I would like to think that I've kicked Heinz a few times, and I definitely know that he's kicked me a few times.
You used to kick me about my prices. You said my prices are too low, and you'd kick me and pick me and say, "Kirk, I can't charge the prices that you do." And he said, "Why can't you?" And then I did, and I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe I can." Glad I did.
Yeah, well, I mean, but there's just different aspects and stuff like that, and really, I have to give a shout out to some of the people that you have to give a shout out to the people who've helped you along the way, because no one gets there alone. You have to have people helping you. Certainly, Alan Williamson was responsible for that, and actually, Alan was responsible for my first major feature article in a magazine, Java Developers Journal. And then and then we started writing editorials and things like that, and other articles, and it's just amazing. Like, things flew from. All of a sudden, you start writing these things. Things started flying from there. All the things just started happening around all of that. And I remember I worked for a company that was basically tanking. So we got out of there into another company that was tanking. But because I'd actually started doing this writing, it actually became, that these companies were tanking around you, that eventually you just, there was no place to jump, right? And it was really the writing that saved me at that point.
If it wasn't for my writing, you wouldn't know about me, and I would not be speaking to this audience right now.
We wouldn't have Jcrete?
Wouldn't have Jcrete.
No.
You wouldn't have, I would be just an unknown Java programmer somewhere, or probably something else programmers. Maybe I'd be programming PHP or Python. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I would be unknown. And they're talking about skill stacks. So writing is really important. At school, Kirk, I was okay. So I've never been technically I've never been a good writer, but I've always when I get inspired, then I tend to enjoy it. I tend to really enjoy it.
Writing in anger is so easy.
Writing in anger?
Yeah.
Or what?
Inspired,
yes. Writing inspired I find very easy. So what helps me, for those of you listening, what helps me a lot with writing is that I sort of make this mental commitment that I'm writing one Java specialist's article every month. Now, I've missed a few months, but Jack Shirazi has missed 1 month since he started, and he started 1 month after me. So he's missed a single month because of computer trouble. And besides that, every single month, Jack Shirazi, towards the end of the month, you're going to get an email from him. So I'm not as good, but I've done quite a few. I've done about 282 articles. That's 20 years of articles, and I force myself to do it every month. And by forcing it every month, it's completely stupid to force myself every month, but that way at least I don't not do it. It's sort of I remember it, and so just having a commitment and saying I'm doing this like once a month, even if it's difficult, because you've got this commitment, you're doing it once a month, at least something goes out.
And I wrote for IBM Developer Works on a schedule.
That's so difficult, eh?
It's so you gain a new respect for people who are basically cranking out material like in columns on a daily basis or even on a weekly basis. You just look at it and go like, how do they do that? Week after week, month after month, year after year. It is really, when IBM finally came in and says, well, you've had your run after like 18 months, I was going like, oh, thank you.
So interesting. I was writing. I'm going to put quotes in that. I was writing for a German magazine, and the first month, and the worst was they were paying me to write. Right?
Yes.
So paying me, I don't know, €1,000, whatever, to write an article, and I was waiting for the, Hedy, I don't think it's appropriate to post. So I don't know where does this link take us. I don't know.
What are we posting?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So what I was saying.
What's about your book? Not a problem. Was that what you're talking about? No, that's not your book.
No. It's, sorry. What I wanted to say is, when I get paid to write, it puts extra pressure on me. And so the first month, I took one of my old newsletter articles and I just translated it into this really rough German, and I said, here you go. And I was waiting for them to come back and say, oh, no, we can't accept that. That's not original work. You've really published that in English. But they didn't. They actually said, oh, thanks. Okay, cool. They fixed the German and they published it. And then the next month, the deadline was coming, or 2 months later, the deadline was coming up again. And I was like, oh, what am I going to write? I've got to think of something. And then eventually I just took another article and I translated that into German and gave it to them. And I kept this up for like about 1.5 years. And at the end, when I said, look, I can't do this anymore, it was such a relief to stop.
Yes, that was, IBM made us keep 3 months in advance. So we had to have 3 months of articles in the pipeline, which you would think would make it easier, but it actually doesn't. It's just horrible. So you spend all your time thinking, okay, what am I going to write about next? What am I going to write about next? And I had Brian Getz was actually my editor. And it got worse because he was going like, oh, well, Kirk's writing about all these performance stuff. I like writing about performance stuff. Now he writes about performance stuff, and now I see that he's effectively, quote unquote, stolen my topics. And that he's written about something that I was going to write about. And I go like, okay, now I need to come up. So, idea stack gets worse. But I have to say that, even though it's frustrating and it's sometimes can be difficult, it's one of the, I have to tell you, I don't know where I'd be without writing. I'd be nowhere. No, absolutely nowhere. And it's a skill that just translates across just about everything you do. So I think that's probably one of the most important things that I did. Like I said, we wouldn't have met. There'd be no J-Crete. There'd be all Bruno. We wouldn't be talking here. There's just nothing would be happening without it. Nothing. So that's the key part.
I agree. And the little trick that I know, I'm pretty much like you, Kirk. Writing for me, it's very painful. A lot of people tell me that I write well, and everything, but for me, it's extremely painful. I take too long, and I procrastinate a lot on it and everything. So 2 things that have been helping me. One is writing 5 minutes every single day, right? So this, I commit to write every single day for at least 5 minutes. Doesn't matter what.
Yeah.
So that's so 5 minutes thing for me is good, because if I get to the end of the day and I figure out I didn't write 5 minutes today, I can always spend, just kind of get before I go to bed, spend 5 minutes and write something, right? So having 5 minutes a day, and it's small enough that I can force myself to do it without getting mad.
I think the other thing is I've always had a routine. I started when I was working in the government, because we'd get daily briefings in the morning. And so it just got me into a routine where I liked reading and just having time myself to get myself organized in the morning for the day. And if you're going to do writing, it's about that time. Right. But what I noticed is that, you know, like I do the procrastination, all that stuff about writing and everything like that. I'm doing it now because I have to write something, and I'm on this webinar instead of writing, and or I'm doing something else instead of writing. But you know, last weekend on Saturday, I started writing at 8 in the morning, and at 5:30 or 6, I looked up and I said, "Oh, the day's gone." So if you do get in the groove, you got to be able to take advantage of it. And I think, you know, fortunately, Heinz and myself have been in the position where we're a little bit flexible on schedules, meaning that, you know, I think, you know, here's the other thing. It's like, you know, the 9 to 5 grind, I think, just beats the creativity out of you. You just need to take time for yourself, you know. And if your employers don't like that, then I would say, you know, somehow they have to understand that, like, if your software is a creative process, right? You're trying to solve problems and stuff like that. I heard some story the other day. It was I don't know where it's from, but effectively, apparently it was from some guy working in a construction firm, running the software, the IT department or something like that, right? And the boss came out and she said, "You know how I know that we're being productive in the field?" Said, "I hear lots of hammers." I said, "When I walk in here, I don't hear lots of keyboards, like keys clacking." And I was going like, that's such a horribly bad analogy.
That's hilarious. Don't hear lots of keyboards typing.
Okay. So, that's a bad analogy, right?
That's the advantage of the computers, that you could put the sound of the keyboard typing outside, right? So that's not a problem at all.
But you know, sometimes you just, like, you know, like, you maybe, if you've been following my Twitter feed, I've been taking lots of pictures of strange places. And this is like it's mostly because of the pandemic, right? It's like, you know, I'm in an area where it's fortunate that I can get out and not be at risk. And I decided, you know, I was experimenting with my iPhone, so I said, I wonder what kind of quality pictures I can get with my iPhone. So I put them up and everything like that, you know, once a day. Fresh photos from the walk before. But, you know, and my wife's going like, "Isn't it boring? You go on these like 2-hour walks?" I'm going like, actually not. Because I'm not just walking out there. Yeah, I'm enjoying the scenery, but I'm also mulling through problems. Oh yeah, that's the one I put up today. I'm mulling through problems in my mind, and sorting things out. And actually, when I finally do get to looking at the problem, I can generally rip through the problem, right? I'm not thinking about it anymore. I'm executing on it, right? So even though I'm out on this 2-hour walk, it's not like I'm 2 hours away from anything. It's like I am actually doing something.
Right. Kirk, can I just interrupt with just 1 minute here? So, you know, we're going to continue here a little bit more, you know, but we're on the top of the hour. And I just want to tell everyone that right now it's starting a new batch of presentations, right? Since we have a little bit more time here at the stage, right? We can keep, you know, Kirk coming a little late, so we can actually give him a little bit more time. But right now, there's going to be 3 sessions starting, right? 10 golden lessons with Rafael Del Nero. He's going to do a mentoring right now. Also, Eyal Riransky will talk about introduction to machine learning, and Barry Bird is gonna do try something new, writing and teaching, right? So exactly the thing that Kirk is talking about. Barry is gonna talk about how you can do writing. And now, one thing I want to tell you is that Altug had a connection problem, so he couldn't come here on the time of his presentation. So he'll do it now. right? So also Altug is going to do domain storytelling, and that's going to start right now too. So if you want to go to any of those sessions, we're also going to put the links on the chat in a minute. And as soon as we wrap this up here, we're also going to talk about skills here at the main stage in a few minutes. All right, sorry.
It's late treat, so I'm gonna sign off. Thanks for.
Oh, I got one
sorry
more
for extending.
Before you go, before you disappear, I know it's getting late there. So you know how you can spot the good photographer from the bad photographer?
Taught us?
Okay, so the good photographer takes 10,000 photographs and throws away 9,999 of them.
Yeah, sure.
Right? The bad photographer takes about a dozen, but doesn't throw any of them away, right?
Right, okay.
So I might look like a good photographer here, but
good night. Thanks very much for having me.
Kurt, it was awesome to have you here, man. Thanks a lot. And I really appreciate both of you, actually, but really appreciate that since you're leaving now. I really appreciate that you part here. This has been a long time dream of kind of running a career event. So, and I'm glad that we're able to do this in such a nice way that we can be talking here. So thanks a lot, Heinz. It was awesome to have you here, man. Thanks a lot.
That's a stock photo. You didn't take that. Yeah.